Stay open to the answer coming to you. And these answers come in the strangest of ways. When looking through an unfamiliar book, and all of a sudden we read just the right passage, or we're flipping on the television set in a way that we normally never do, and all of a sudden there's something that we hear that's just the right answer. And these answers always come with profound feelings. And when the answer from your inner wisdom does come, immediately stop, or as soon as you can, reasonably, and quiet yourself. And decide upon an action step that you can take to acknowledge the receipt of the answer. Giving yourself plenty of time to initiate that action. And appreciate the wisdom that resides within you. And the connection of that wisdom to the wisdom that resides outside of us. And appreciate how it's in the best interest of the universe for you to be just exactly who you're intended to be. And as we are who we're intended to be, then we'll achieve the most happiness that we can achieve. And there's just enough room for everybody to be just exactly who they're supposed to be. Plenty of room. And relax. And begin to move back in the direction of normal waking consciousness. Becoming more aware of the room that you're in. The amount of light. The sounds in the room. And anytime you're ready, just go ahead and open your eyes, returning with a sense of calm and peace. And now if you would, and if we can leave the lights down, this feels really comfortable. No, down. Never mind. Just take 5 minutes and as much or little as you want to communicate with your neighbor that you've gotten to know so well with the other exercise. Talk about this around beliefs, around the experience of this meditative process, and then we'll answer concluding questions that anybody has. So I just take 5 minutes to talk back and forth around this experience and around the concepts, whichever you're more comfortable communicating. it's saying. It's funny what our bodies tell us we'll listen. Let's take the first few questions, if you would, related to the exercise or the work around core beliefs and inner wisdom. So questions about that anyone has at this point? Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious about what it means when you say, does it help me avoid my most undesirable conflicts?
Right.
My sense about undesirable conflicts is at times they should not be avoided. So I guess I'm a little confused about that piece of it.
Yeah. The question has to do with helps me avoid my most undesirable conflicts. Well, again, I think it's important that we satisfy that in our own minds. To me, that means I don't want to go to jail. Okay, and I really don't like fighting with my wife. Okay, now sometimes it's important for me to fight with my wife, but I want to do that consciously. Okay? And I want to avoid it when I want to avoid it, okay? Because it's important. You know, I think for me, living with someone is one of the most difficult things to do. And so there are times when conflict there is important.
Then maybe I'm misunderstanding. You're talking about external conflicts with other people?
No. I also want to avoid certain internal conflicts. Confusion and conflicts about when I die, what's going to happen to me. Okay? That was a very intense, undesirable conflict growing up. So that was what I was focused on, and thank you for helping me shift. But no, there are important internal conflicts to avoid. And I want to avoid those, And I want to avoid them by developing systematic beliefs that help me move in a healthy direction. I want to avoid them in healthy ways, not unhealthy ways.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, about anything then. We've got 8 minutes and 8 minutes. Yes.
Burnout in professional people dealing with these questions?
Mm-hmm. The question of burnout. I've dealt continuously in this work since April 1971. The longest break I took from the work was 6 weeks one time. Okay? And I think we all have to deal with our own issues of burnout, because that's a continuous and ongoing problem. And it's a real signal to me, because what is burnout? It's a combination of, it's a clustering of unhealthy emotions in myself. That is related to a clustering of unhealthy beliefs in myself, which result in a clustering of unhealthy activities in my life. So the best solution for burnout is awareness, and a commitment to my quality of life, and developing a support system that will help me stay focused on that, so that will support me in what's important to me. Because burnout, to me, tends to follow, off the top of my head, in the 20 years that I've done this work, I've burned out, flamed out in roaring ways at least 6 or 7 times in the 20 years. And they tend to all follow similar patterns. So it's important for me to be aware of those patterns. And to me, this is all doable, and in all aspects enrich my life. But it's a constant, ongoing problem. I've just got a new book that's going to be coming out. I'm a real setup for burning myself out again real quickly, undermining my commitments to family by screwing up my priorities. And so it's important to have a support system that will give me honest feedback around those sorts of things, because I burn myself out mostly when I get my priorities out of alignment, and my life starts to lose balance. I'm out of harmony with myself and my life. And that's an important signal to make some changes, and to me it's an ongoing process. So, does that adequately address that issue? Welcome. Yes, sir.
Tuesday's lecture, you said something about helping the person support the denial of that.
No, denial, period.
Denial, okay. Yeah, in the workshop, as you described the things people do, they were dealing with that quite a bit. Could you say something about balancing those two things?
Yeah, balancing denial and working on things. Well, when a person wants to deny by not coming to a session, I don't push them to do it. And I also label people that this person is using a lot of denial, and try to work to help them develop a stronger coping strategy and watch how the denial starts to fall away. But it's doing it with gentle confrontation rather than hard confrontation. And that's difficult. And I've watched masters go right at the denial. I don't have that skill. And I think it's important for us to honor our limitations. And that when my limitations, by not honoring them, interfere with my patient's health and well-being, then I'm not being responsible as a physician, or as a person in the helping professions, or as a person on the planet. It's trying to find that balance for myself. It's not easy. And so the way that I do it changes as my own skills change, and depending on what's going on in my life. When I'm closer to burnout, I have less energy for doing good work. When things are going well, I have a lot more energy. So I'm able to stay with the person a lot more. I can do it with a lot more love, because I have a lot more love to give, because I've been doing things to bring a lot more love into my life. So it all changes back and forth. So people see me on a good day, they say, "Mike, you've changed a lot, and you're really getting a lot better at what you do." And they see me on a shitty day, you know, "Ooh, taking 3 steps backwards." You know? You're welcome. Yes.
You talked about the support system. What do you do if a patient doesn't have a family or any support system?
Mm-hmm. Well, you help them start build one. Yeah. And the place to start is by learning good principles about themselves so that they can have stronger self-esteem, do things for themselves, and then look, where am I going to add my first person to my support system? Where am I going to find that person? Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
How has your work over the 20 years with death and cancer affected your own view about your own death and your relationship to death?
Yeah. My work around death, influencing my own beliefs about death, dramatically, very dramatically. During the years, I've had a number of brushes with death, and it's been real interesting that the 2 times when I thought I was going to die, one was 1979, and one was about 1982. So both of those times it was interesting, because I spent a lot of time reflecting on them afterwards, because I have strong beliefs about how I want to die and when I want to die. And I've put a lot of work into that, and I've put a lot of work into the area of death, and a lot of it has been some of the most difficult work that I've done with myself. And I also believe that dealing with people and dying is one of the fastest ways for me to gain in spirituality, because it's one of the most spiritual times around birth and around death, but particularly around death. That's a great opportunity for me to be able to participate in someone's death. It's very special. Not easy, but special. And both times, when I first realized that I might die, my reaction was terror. I wasn't particularly proud of that response, but it was real clear. Terror was how I would best describe it, or panic. And I didn't, not pleased, but that was my response in both circumstances. And after the terror, which didn't last very long, my next response was rage, because this was not the way I had intended to die. And I was relatively peaceful in the rage, but I was in basic, deep anger because it was not the way it should be, okay, until I didn't die. And that's been, but to me it's an ongoing process, and will be an ongoing process my entire life. And I have much to learn in the area of death. And I'm not in any particular hurry to learn a whole lot more, and I don't avoid the opportunities to learn to the best of my knowledge, because I don't always know when I'm avoiding things. You're welcome. Last question. You want to brave the last question? That's.
Do you give exercises to the people when they leave you after that week?
By exercises, you mean things to do?
Visualization?
Definitely, yeah. And they set that up themselves, but that's very clear. They go home with what I call a 2-year health plan. That is a very clear plan. And one part of that is their mental practice, their use of imagery. And the question is, what are the things that they are going to be working on during those times of practice? But definitely, one of the things, that's the last thing that the therapist is working with them on Friday, is clarifying their 2-year health plan, so that they know where they want to be 3 months from now, 6 months from now, and 9 months from now. Because that's the only part of the 2-year health plan that we really clarify by the time a person leaves. Because looking further than 9 months down the road doesn't make a lot of sense. But they have looked at 2 years from now for where they want to be, and that gives them an idea of how much of that progress they want to have made by 9 months from that. Our biggest problem is slowing people down, getting them to relax into getting well. That's our biggest single problem, as I see it. Dealing with that fear of I've got to hurry up and change or I'm going to die, and say this is it. I really appreciate the opportunity of working together with you. Your cooperation, this whole conference has been special for me, but especially today. Thank you very much.
Reveries and the like, or in terms of the collective unconscious myth, legends, fairy tales. Going on to the conscious level, we find in three. The conscious imagination, that is to say, the kind of imagination that is controlled and guided by rational thinking and reflecting. The dominating features of this field are ratio, logic, science, analysis. Then finally in four, we have the ultimate results of all that conscious will, that means action, decision, deeds, exploits, innovation, creativity, realizing of ideals, ethics. You may notice that we have described a circular movement of what we could call the vital impulse of libido. Let's take an example, an instinct called hunger. being hungry means an urge, a need that is not yet satisfied. Let's, for the sake of more clearness, suppose there is no food at hand. What will happen? First thing, the drive will convert itself not into a clear-cut plan to find some food, but into inorderly and playful and exuberant fantasies concerning food, images of revelries, all the more extravagant, the more removed the possibility of getting food, and the more violent the hungry feeling is. This is quite an exact correlation. The vividness of the imagination being equal to the level of hunger, and the hunger is corresponding exactly, precisely with the physical need, as is seen in records of people are starving and who relate regularly in a diary to their experiences, dreams and daydreams, as for instance Carp and his companions in his expedition to the South Pole. Now, obviously, we have advanced into field 2. With these fantasies coming out uncontrolled from the hidden depths of the unconscious. These fantasies eventually tend to clear themselves, to become more realistic. This is necessarily so, as obviously life must go on. Life must be sustained. That is a primary necessity. So we come to field 3, logical thinking, realistic reflecting. And from that results the last step in our fourfold journey, a clear, reasonable decision leading up to an action, finding a bakery, for instance, and buying some bread. Our whole life evolves in such circles, smaller and larger ones, from few minutes to months and even years, superposing themselves, modifying each other, forming meaningful patterns, and thus weaving the fabric of our lives. Now in hypnosis, we are trying to eliminate 2 principal features of each human being, logical thinking and willing. We remove all possible cognitive means that are directed toward a specific target. That's why we prefer indirect suggestion. And at the same time, we annihilate the dynamics corresponding to these aims, which without our interfering would constitute an act of the will. Logical thinking and willing are our most potent instruments in overcoming the challenges of life. We would be totally at a loss without them. We wouldn't be able either to work nor to fight. We could not fulfill any desire or need whatsoever. We couldn't attain any achievement without them. But in hypnosis, we have quite another situation. This situation is exactly the opposite of ordinary life, and that's where its terrific possibilities lie. Here, we create an atmosphere of confidence, of trust, of letting go. In this setting, the patient learns that there is no point in fighting or working or straining, because here it's no longer necessary. Here he may feel safe. Thinking and willing do protect us against the traumatizing incidents of everyday life, because they provide us with a means of coping with them. But at the same time, willing and thinking create, without our knowing, the objective world we are used to,